I do not have the temperament of that practical incarnation, but that was me. The fact that I'm still here, if I keep this going, something like that'll happen again at some point.
Yeah.
And I have the power to stop that now by accepting this thing that's not fair and self-sacrificing.
That's awesome.
That's
drop the mic, unscrew that. Drop.
That's what this game is about.
There's a discussion that we have with somebody else where we're remembering a debate that we had long ago in one of the previous incarnations. And this debate was convincing somebody else that they do not exist, right? Do you remember this?
Not really. I might not have seen this.
So we remember a time where we debated someone. Apparently, Nameless One is so skilled a debater that he can convince someone that they themselves do not exist. So do you have anything next?
Wasn't that Adon that you're referring to? Like, you know, the character of Adon.
I can't believe,
because I saw this.
I literally can't believe we've gotten this far and not even mentioned Adon yet.
Well, but see, here's the thing. This is actually part of where this all fits in and why it's coming here than later. So, I didn't know about this at all. I played the whole game and I didn't, so it's not really anywhere in my notes. But people commented and said, "Oh, by the way, there you can wish a character into existence into the game, right?"
It's the
and
nature
I was
of
like,
belief.
"Well, that's crazy." So then I look into that, and it's pretty wild. Yeah, if you get enough people to believe that someone named Adon exists,
then Adon
that
exists.
person does exist, right? It's wild. But also through this memory here, you can convince somebody that they do not exist, right? Through some reverse Cartesian thing, I suppose. And that person literally stops existing once they stop believing that they themselves exist.
Chained by
they
belief.
stop existing. But what's beautiful is that the character, Nameless One, whoever it is it Adon at the time or is it Nameless One still?
It would be the Nameless One, yeah.
Okay. He doesn't believe that. So he convinced somebody to believe something that he himself doesn't believe, because if he believed it, he would stop existing. So he convinced somebody to stop existing that he doesn't, but he has a reason to, even though he can convince someone else to literally stop existing.
Using logic, he doesn't.
He
even
has his
follow
own
himself.
way,
Yeah.
exactly, because he's unearthed that, but he's found a way around it to where he can continue existing. He doesn't actually believe that, but he convinced somebody else to believe it, and then they stop existing. It's wild. It's very, very interesting. I thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
He was unswayed by his own argument, I suppose.
Yeah, but just touching on Adon again real quick. Yeah, the way that Adon comes into being is if you have said enough times to different NPCs, "My name is Adon." So you essentially convince
But it's
a
a lie.
sufficient number of people that a person named Adon exists, and then this person just approaches you in the bar, right? And it's like, "Oh, I'm Adon." Like,
yeah, it's wild.
It's just great. It's great. It's really clever. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's clever.
It's awesome. Cursed Gone. It slipped into Carceria. We already kind of touched on this. You have to go around convincing people to good stuff and be less chaotic and more orderly. And then you go to Trios himself, like up in this tower, and there's some more really, really good dialogue there that I took down that I would like to read. But essentially, the gist of this is that he thinks that the upper planes, the way they are sort of conducting this proxy war, is against the tenets of everything that is good and that they believe in. And so he thinks his betrayal in coming down and raising these armies that these people created and then using them against them to wake them up is actually not a betrayal, but in their best interest. So this is how he has justified what he is doing, right? So, Nameless One, you would taint the essence of good and evil and with evil incarnate? That sounds like betrayal. There are many definitions of betrayal. One must live long enough to experience them. Even your life, were it not fraught with forgetfulness, does not have the range of centuries necessary to appreciate them. Such a betrayal is no betrayal at all. There was a hint of that seemed really condescending. Like, you just don't get it. You haven't been around long enough. It's like, no, I get it. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to understand, dude. I wouldn't have to live for 500 years or 1,000 years to understand what you're saying.
That'd be funny.
It's not that deep, bro.
If you meet like a fifth dimensional being who just explains to you the concept of 4D chess.
Yeah.
And just basically says, no, he saw through the whole thing, and then he got him to do the opposite thing that he wanted to do. And then you're just like, dude, I totally get all that. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's not nearly as deep as you think it is.
That's pretty funny.
What really happened to your wings? Because his wings were burned, right?
Of course.
Bator's fires burn hot indeed, but they are candles compared to a father's anger.
Oh,
That was a great line, I thought.
Ooh.
That was a really, really good one.
Yeah. Well,
so-
it is said that the fires of hell is the same thing as the fire of what love, which can turn into disappointment, right?
Yeah, right.
That it's almost like the person that you love the most or respect the most. That can it can either be fire of pain or fire of love.
Yeah. There's no pain like being cast from Mount Celestia.
And is that the top one, like middle top?
Celestia? I think
Elysium
Celestia
is
is
the
order.
middle top.
Yeah, so Elysium is middle top.
Oh, Elysium, that was it. Okay.
Celestia
Celestium's
is
on the order
order.
side. You're right. It tilts on
Yeah,
the other side.
is good, lawful good.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So you tell him to stand down. You can still be redeemed. He looks deeply into your eyes. The time for redemption has passed, mortal. I
dear.
regret nothing.
So you have to
I
regret in order
regret
to redeem.
nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
This is all built into the first incarnation.
So he can't get into the Fortress of Ruins.
No, Trios couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
If one truly believes in a
Yeah.
cause, all the key words
Believe,
are here.
regret,
I'm going to
yeah.
read this again.
Okay,
Pay
go ahead,
attention to all the key words. The time for redemption has passed, mortal. I regret nothing. If one truly believes in a cause, one must be willing to betray it. I truly believe in good, and so I choose to betray it. How many of those words could we go down a rabbit hole based on all the conversation we've just had in this episode and be like, let's break that down word by word? We're not going to do it.
We're not
But I'm
gonna
just
do
saying we could. Maybe I can change your mind. Trios, let us have a contest of arms, mortal, and we shall see whose ideas have the greater weight behind them. Defend yourself.
Yeah. This is the part where he's like, well, if I had my full power, I would have won. And Nameless One is like, you could never have won.
This is every scrub on every fighting game online you've ever encountered.
Yeah.
This is basically Trios.
Yep.
Okay, so after the fight's over, some more really good dialogue. A man's mortality is a compass that points his way in life. If it may be grasped like an object, mortality, much can be learned about the nature of the man it was torn from. Your adversary knows more about you than you will ever know. He has watched you and studied you across many of your half-lives. I know his heart. He will not return that which you seek. I love that first part. I just love to mull over that. A man's mortality is a compass that points his way in life. This goes back a little bit to kind of what you were saying last week, where your mortality is sort of what gives you any level of urgency to do anything.
To do anything.
Right?
Yeah.
That kind of is in the same, maybe like adjacent concept there.
Yeah, totally.
We'll see about that, says the Nameless One. What will you do when I have left you, Trios? I shall once again attempt to levy a host against the gates of paradise. They will not have me back, and there is no other purpose to my existence. So you can then say, I'll have to stop you now, or have you forgotten the face of your father? This is the more interesting of the two, I feel like. What do you mean? And the Nameless One says, the upper planes are the home of justice, beauty, and goodness. They are also home to forgiveness. Go home, admit your error, and beg forgiveness. And this makes him stop for a second. You speak convincing words, mortal, and their wisdom pierces me. I shall seek the forgiveness of my fathers and accept my retribution, or any retribution they choose. Take this and farewell. If we meet again, it is my hope that I will be redeemed. But here's a problem. Did you recruit Valor?
I did.
Because that's not good enough for him. He's just like, nope, I'm going to kill you now. Bah! They're like, no, Valor, what are you doing? Stop. You can't stop him. So if Valor is with you, he's going to kill him because mercy is weakness, and that's bullcrap. I'm not letting you just let him. He has to be punished. And so he can be like, oh, curse you for letting this happen to me. and he like kind of puts a curse on you or whatever. I don't know. Really great stuff though. Anything else from Trios before we move into the Fortress of Regrets? But before we get there, actually, we got to go to the Unbroken Circle of Zerthmon.
Just in regards to, I never recruited Valor because I didn't seem like the type of guy that I would want in my party. But now that I know that he can sort of do the bad thing while you say do the good thing, it's kind of an easy way of getting all the benefits of doing the bad thing while just saying, well, hey, I don't condone what he's doing. He does what he wants, even though I say the good thing, just how it works out.
Wash your hands clean of the whole situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would have done that.
I did a lot more fighting than I expected to. He's quite useful.
Yeah. Valor's a very strong character. And there's two different characters you can end up encountering in the Fortress of Regrets at the end of the game, depending on your alignment. So if you're an evil character, Valar will fight you in the Fortress of Regrets. Otherwise, it's going to be Ignis.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. By the way, Mix says that in the wiki, it talks about the practical one getting into the Fortress of Regrets.
Oh.
It says that he manipulated his companions to get into the fortress.
That makes perfect sense. It was their regret. It was their regret. That's beautiful. That's so smart.
Because our companions come with us, right? But then, so he was able to kind of piggyback on them.
He got them to open it with their regret.
Yeah.
What a freaking terrible person.
What a psychopath. Yeah, absolutely. They're all just tools. They're all just pawns.
I literally hate that character so much. In the good way, in the way in which this enriches my experience.
The righteous. Yeah.
It makes the game more meaningful, more deep to me.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Let's very quickly go over the Unbroken Circle of Zerthmon. So what's so interesting about this is that, gosh, this makes me hate the practical incarnation even more. It's like a religious text.
Yeah.
So it's this circle, and at certain points you can unlock kind of the next level, the next piece of wisdom.
Right.
I think it might be important context before we even start breaking any of this down and whatever analysis we might try to apply to it, and understand it's a forgery by the practical one.
Yeah. This is maybe I shouldn't. This has ties into the movie that we reviewed on Patreon, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes.
It's evil that is.
It's crazy. Yes. I'm going to way more into it when we talk about that.
Okay, good.
Especially with how emotional I was on my recent viewing of it when this happened. When this manipulation happened, it like literally got tears watching it. It is a very, very powerful scene. But I don't know what it is. Actually, I think I do. But it doesn't seem like that. I'm not seeing through the matrix correctly, so it feels very, I don't know, coincidental or like fate or something. But it's weird to me how anytime we're talking about something on the podcast, it just so happens that like everything else I'm watching or getting into at the time is also covering exactly that same theme.
Yeah, Carl Jung, synchronicity.
The same thing happens to you. That happens to me all the damn time.
Okay, here's the thing. When I am studying something very meaningful and that I'm passionate about, it happens to me a lot. When I'm just kind of dinking around, not doing anything too important, or specifically actually when I'm learning a language, and then I shut myself off. I don't read any philosophy books. I don't look at any religious texts or anything like that. It stops happening to me. I don't notice those things ever.
Yeah.
Except for, I learned that word yesterday and they used it today, But yeah, I'm learning all the common words, right? Of course. Right. But then as soon as I get back into Carl Jung or any religious stuff or any of the mythologies, I'm just like, boom, it's everywhere. It's just all of a sudden the synchronicities just start happening again.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Can you explain real quickly the concept of synchronicity?
Synchronicity? Actually, let's have Max explain that.
Okay.
So synchronicity is what happens when there's something that appears inside your head, some sort of mental content. Maybe it's in a dream, maybe it's a thought. And then you see something that reflects that inner content in the exterior world. So I'll give a very famous example from Carl Jung's clinical practice. This is probably the most famous example of synchronicity ever.
Yeah,
he cool. And I know Kason already knows exactly what example I'm about to bring up.
It's such a good one.
He's counseling one of his patients, and they're doing dream analysis. And the patient talks about receiving a piece of jewelry in a dream, and that jewelry is in the form of a golden scarab. And then a few minutes into the session, after she tells about this dream, there's this tapping at Carl Jung's cabinet door. And he's like, what the hell is that? So he goes over to see what it is. He catches this bug in his hand. And then he walks over to his patient and he said, well, I found your scarab, and it's an actual scarab. And keep in mind, if I recall correctly, his practice was based in Austria.
That's not,
you're not going to find a whole lot of scarab bugs in that climate, if you know what I mean. So, stuff like that happens. Yeah.
It does happen. I should believe it. It's just so crazy.
Yeah.
That's like tops the list of synchronous events.
Yeah. So,
but that kind of thing happens a lot to me.
The reason it's crazy is because it feels as if there's some kind of fate unfolding before you or something like that. Yeah. Of course, I think those who might be skeptical of the concept would say, well, you're already thinking about this a lot, maybe even obsessively. And so therefore your pattern recognition
is tuned
brain is just going to start seeing that thing you're thinking about in things all around you, because that's just what it's good at doing.
Yes.
So
however,
regardless
the scarab
of what
thing is just madness.
Regardless of what is truly happening there with synchronicity, it's happening to me big time right now. And not just in media, but in like real life with real people. And it's been a very, very nuts last couple months. But the movie you're referring to does this even better. Maybe more clearly, not better. It does it in a way that's more clear and, for me, more powerfully sort of resonant. But the Dakon has this religious text that for the entire game he's talking about all this wisdom he gains from it. And you can begin to study it yourself. I think Dakon only goes up to like level 5 or 6 or something like that. There's like 8 levels. And there's a certain point where even his faith is not quite strong enough for him to understand level 6. So he can't move beyond level 6. But he starts allowing you to use it and to unlock the different levels and gain the wisdom and the history of his people. And how they were enslaved by the Illithids, how they became sentient, or they regained their sentience, I guess. And how they fought their war against the Illithids, and then how that led to a civil war between the Gith over, again, differing philosophy. Should we go, like, commit freaking genocide on the Illithids, or should we not? A little bit of possible, no prophet is perfect. But when a person realizes that, it can kind of tend to shake their faith. So this is kind of what happens with Dakon. He sort of realizes some things about Zerthamon, the original sentient of his race, the one who's looked up to as this messiah or this prophetic figure, sees some conflicting aspects of his character that caused him to challenge his faith a little bit. So he's stuck on that level 6. But you can go beyond that, up to level 7 and 8. That's probably sufficient as far as what is necessary to sort of recap. We could read through them. They're not that long. But the important thing to me is all of this study, all of this belief, all of this like internal struggle happening in Dakon's soul, his attempts to try to reconcile his faith, all of it was just invented entirely by the practical incarnation. None of this stuff is an actual historical record that came from his people. And that just freaking devastated me, dude. That devastated me so bad when he admitted that. I was just, I was like in freaking shock. Like, I wanted to kill this man myself. That is so wrong. That is so evil.
But it's very
just
very
to keep
practical.
His mind busy, just to give him something to think about, so that he could continue using him in the way that he needed to, because he just wanted his dagger. That's really what he wanted, right?
That's right.
He wanted his
that's
weapon.
Right. Yeah.
And he was like, "Do you have any idea what that weapon is that he's carrying? Are you freaking kidding me? You are here and you didn't realize that that's the freaking tool that we need." That's the whole reason I did all this, was to get his freaking dagger. Okay, Max, you're going to say something.
I don't think I think only parts of the Unbroken Circle of Zerthamon were actually forged by the Practical Incarnation.
Oh, really?
Because he, if I recall correctly, he had his doubts about it when Shreklor fell, and then the Practical Incarnation found him when he was floating in limbo, and then gave him another copy of it. But the Githzerai and the Githyanki would have had the teachings of Zerthamon before that, right?
Yeah, so let me clarify what I'm saying. I know why that was confusing.
It's the parts that he found most meaningful.
So the actual text that the circle, the freaking the freaking tome that he's carrying around, that is a forgery by the Practical Incarnation. That does not mean that the figures who appear in it are also inventions of the Practical Incarnation. So he obviously would have taken what is commonly known or what is kept in other records that he would have had access to, and he took all of that and invented this religious text specifically for him as he was in his faith crisis.
Right. That's
so,
right.
So the book that that we are reading from, the Unbound Circle of Zerthamon, is the forgery, as far as I understand it.
Okay.
Now, Zerthamon, the person, existed, right? And a lot of what appears in that text is based on historical records. But that book in and of itself is not the historical record. It is a forgery by the Practical Incarnation to keep him from falling into this despair of lost faith, so that he could use him and his dagger for the purposes in which he needed them.
Yeah, that's evil.
Yeah.
That's
very
really evil.
Yeah.
To take somebody, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would suppose that most people have gone through, to whatever degree it is for you and your beliefs. You may not have ever been religious in your life, but there has certainly been a time where many of your baseline assumptions about something you believed in were called into question, and it shatters you.
It should happen. I would say if it hasn't happened yet, then you still have the same belief system of a child. Like I almost feel like that as you grow up and mature, that you should update your belief systems accordingly to the most, I don't know. I almost feel that that's just like a natural thing to do. Otherwise, you're just stuck in the childish, like the nursery rhymes that you learned, and you never updated your idea of God beyond whatever nursery rhyme you were told or something like that, And it's like, no, as you get older, as you get more sophisticated, you should be questioning those nursery rhymes and all of that stuff and try to figure out, a more, I don't know, what would you call it? A more sophisticated idea of that same kind of concept.
So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that most people listening to this have had that crisis of faith.
I'd say they've had
at some point in life, whether that's faith related to religion or whether that's faith related to a person you believed in your life.
Oh, absolutely. Or an assumption that you had that turned out to not be correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An assumption about yourself.
Right.
That an illusion was broken.
Right.
In some way, I believe every person who goes through this life at one point or another is going to have that happen. It is.
Oh yeah, many times. I think
it is one of the most emotionally painful things a person can experience.
Well, it feels like you are breaking.
Yes.
It feels like part of you is dying.
Yes. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in recent years listening to the experiences of people who have lost faith in their religion, and how much they struggle. Like how the process of rebuilding a new foundation of belief is just such a painful thing to do. And scary.
It's what Nietzsche talks about. Right. Yeah, it's almost completely impossible.
And
it's really hard.
And a lot of times, there's just certain parts, certain pieces that the glass is shattered. It's not coming back together again.
Yeah.
And you try to fill it in with something else, and it's never going to really be quite the same.
Right.
There is a real scar left behind by this experience, or many even. And so, having been through that in more than one way in my life, and knowing how painful that is, and then encountering somebody in the midst of that pain and being like, I'm going to invent a text which will rebuild some of that faith you're lacking, that is entirely fake, to use you. I'm not even sure that there's any way for me to articulate how despicable I find that.
Yeah.
That's pretty the
top.
worst.
Yeah.
The worst, most evil type of manipulation there is.
Yeah.
To take someone at this level and give them some hope again in that thing that they're losing.
Yeah.
Instead of allowing them to go through their grieving process and find their way, let's build them back up so that I can get what I want. With this elaborate freaking lie and scheme is just, it's just horrible. So, yeah. When he admits this, and I think I took the dialogue, which we might get to later, I had forgotten this point since my first playthrough. I was like gobsmacked, just like, what the freak? Are you serious? This on the back of that movie we're talking about, on the back of all this stuff happening. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's wild.
Why is this happening right now? Why is everything? What's the synchronicity?
Yeah.
What is this?
So wild.
Anyway,
Very cool.
Messed up stuff. So that's the Unbroken Circles, Earthmon.
Yeah.
But there are some really cool pearls of wisdom you can pull from that. I don't think we need to do it now, but
no. And that's the thing.
And in enduring, go strong.
I love that one.
Perfect.
I love that one. It's great.
In creating a text like that, you would have to draw from some real wisdom in order for it to even be believable at all, right? So it can't contain nothing. It can't just be nonsense.
What's so messed up about
it has to actually have some truth to the universe, to it.
Somebody who is so skilled,
so capable
so
of that,
wise, so intelligent, so capable of good,
and then they just
use their skills for this purpose. There's just something so diabolical about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. What are the circumstances that led this person?
He doesn't
into
even have
this
free
life?
will. What are we talking about? What do you mean? Just give him a pill. He's not diabolical now. It's all good.
Good stuff, right?
It all comes full circle.
My hate is unfounded.
It's just revenge. You want revenge.
It's just revenge.
That's what you want.
It's just revenge. Okay, that's it for that. I want to talk about Ignis very quickly. I don't have anything to read about it. I just found this to be another gut punch type of story of one of the Nameless One's past incarnations, who was this accomplished mage and sorcerer, and was training this little boy with fire magic. And the whole concept of that particular study was that sacrifice is required to gain the ability, right? So the amount of just horrific burning that he inflicted on this child to teach him the skills, just the level of diabolical abuse on a child was very, very hard to read. And so Ignis, having gone through that as training in childhood, turns out to be, wouldn't you know, the type of guy who might want to try to burn down all the sigil.
The things that made that happen to him. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like the circumstances that led him into being the person he was.
Right.
And so who's culpable for that destruction and death that he caused? Is it him? Isn't it Ignis, or is it the Nameless One for inflicting all the abuse and the teachings and setting up the foundation that made him into that kind of person, right? So more sins to lay at the feet of the Nameless One here. What does he need to there's part of me that wonders whether this is the first incarnation. One of the first incarnation's many terrible sins that has made him realize that are unforgivable, that he has to try to delay his death to atone.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever say who this incarnation was that taught Ignis, but there's part of me that wonders if it might be the first. And that this is part of his regret. In any case, it's just tough. It's tough to read, but again, brilliantly written. Very, very effective, very powerful stuff. And then when you end up recruiting Ignis, I don't know if you did.
I did, yeah, because I fought him at the end.
You look at him in a totally different light. He is unhinged. This guy could at any moment just unleash and do a lot of damage and kill a lot of people.
And then the question of whether or not it's his fault just becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? It's this is not this isn't acceptable.
Right. This cannot
He
becomes
continue.
a
This
literal
cannot continue.
of nature, like the fire that he's channeling from the elemental plane.
Yeah.
Like it's something you can't reason or contend with.
Right. Ooh, but what can change the nature of fire? But
This is again kind of all coming into sort of our central thematic talking point here, right? Like, you look at Ignis, all the people who punished him, and the punishment they inflicted on him, and like, geez, is that bad?
Yeah.
Like, he has to sit there literally burning alive for who knows how long
time,
while
yeah.
a bunch of people spectate. They
Yep.
come to a bar
Right.
to
He's the centerpiece.
engage and socialize and
Yeah.
mock this being who
Right.
is literally burning an eternal fire in front of them,
Yeah.
who cannot escape that pain.
Right.
I want to know how
That's
Chris
interesting.
Avallone came up with these punishments. He makes the guy who wrote the movie Seven look like Robert Munch.
That's right. I remember that.
It's a
That
good
movie is
It's a
crazy.
good movie. Super
That
good
was a
movie.
very
We'll
good
probably
movie.
talk about that movie at some point.
Yeah, we will, I think.
Oh
But
God.
But anyway, you finally free this being, and then you learn your own culpability of what you did to like cause this monster you see before you.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's a part of you that's like, it's irrelevant whose fault this was. This cannot be allowed
Yeah.
to happen. We cannot, this person
needs-
cannot be free in society.
Yeah.
And this kind of comes back to the whole, well, do you still punish the perpetrator of the crime,
Right.
even if they
It wasn't
were
their fault.
under an influence they couldn't
Yeah,
control? Well, it depends on, can we actually treat the illness? Is there a method?
That's part
Is
of
there
it.
a pill that will cure their psychopathy or not?
Right.
We don't have that now. So that person, whether or not we feel bad for them, whether or not we hear their life story and realize the circumstances under which they were born were not their fault, and that shaped them into this person
Right.
who probably did not choose to be this way, that doesn't matter. We can't let that person kill 40 more people.
Yeah.
Like, we've got to keep them away until we have a method of curing this
Right.
mental illness. But when we do, are people going to accept allowing that person back into society?
And
Can
if-
we just
and
let
if
that
so,
go?
why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the question
Yeah.
that I think you have to ask about the nameless one.
Right. Yeah. I think that is part of what it's getting at.
Like,
yeah.
the guy that we were is not the guy that committed these crimes in the past.
Right.
I was not the practical incarnation. I was not the first incarnation. I
So
didn't do
is
that
it
stuff.
just, if we're just talking
But
about justice here, is it just
Do
to,
I have to go
Yeah.
fight in the blood war for eternity for that?
Well, but he does come to the conclusion that more or less.
Because
Yes.
if it continues,
Yeah.
torment, I'm a lodestone. I just
Right.
draw people in to
Yeah.
create more suffering.
Right. So whether it's your fault or not, this is the reality.
This is the reality
yeah.
is
Yeah.
I cannot exist in
Right.
society without causing a great deal more suffering and torment. Whether that was my choice or not that put me in that
Yeah.
position, that's just the freaking fact of the matter.
Right.
And I have to separate myself from this and go fight in the blood war and accept that punishment because of my future incarnations and the suffering that they will cause. The only way to prevent that is for me to accept this responsibility.
Right.
That's
maybe
the answer he comes
he's
to.
sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, but maybe he's able to make peace with that. It's to some degree, at least, because he achieved the one thing that the game is sort of aiming at. The thing that Dakon has been aiming at is to know himself, and he knows himself. He's able to integrate himself with the transcendent one at the end. And even though that is his fate, it's like, well, I did what the whole purpose of life is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
and that comes back to, again, sort of a recurring answer that we kind of come to, or maybe that I mostly come to. Acceptance is the key to avoidance of a lot of freaking suffering and torment and pain in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to accept some things, even though that's not fair, that's not my fault, or that I didn't choose that. This person did this to me. Like, none of that, none of going down that whole rabbit hole of thinking is going to do anything other than cause more suffering.
Right.
Whether it's your own
Yeah.
emotional, mental suffering, whether that's you're going to be in this revenge mode and you're going to inflict more suffering on other people who were also innocent, which
Right.
is always what happens. This goes back to
Yeah.
our what was the game we just did? Tactics.
Oh,
Tactics Ogre.
Yeah, that's
right?
right. Yeah.
That sort of cycle of revenge.
Yep.
Acceptance is really the only way to break
Right.
that cycle of torment and to like actually start getting some healing and moving on from this terrible event that has happened. You got to accept that it happened. You got to accept that it wasn't fair. You got to accept that you're not going to feel great about the fact that you can't change that.
Yeah.
But you can't.
But you can't.
You have to accept that you can't and start moving in a healthy direction.
Right.
And in this game's case, that was to go fight in the blood war so that the people of the upper planes don't have to keep following you into the freaking Tower of Regret and Fortress of Regret and getting killed and you training more monsters and taking advantage of people and manipulating people and over and over and over and over and over.
It's a loving self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
That he does, yeah.
Yeah.
In many ways, acceptance is about self-sacrifice. You have to, you have to sacrifice something.
And often acceptance is sacrificing your ego is what often is what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that that is kind of at the center of what this game is really driving at.
Yeah.
Right. You may not have had free will whatsoever. However, your continued existence in this cycle is going to cause a great deal more suffering and has already caused untold suffering. I do not have the temperament of that practical incarnation, but that was me. The fact that I'm still here, if I keep this going, something like that'll happen again at some point. Yeah. And I have the power to stop that now by accepting this thing that's not fair and self-sacrificing.
That's awesome.
That's
drop the mic, unscrew that. Drop.
That's what this game is about.
Yeah. I like that. It's beautiful.
Okay. I do want to, as a very last thing, kind of go through some of the dialogue with the other incarnations.
Very good.
Especially with the practical incarnation.
that jerk.
Oh my goodness. So let's see. I already went over some of this, but just the way it's written is so good. You gave Dakon the Unbroken Circle of Zerthamon. Why? The Unbroken Circle, that collection of lies? Yes, it was a week's worth to forge such a thing.
A week.
It was necessary to make it so he would cease doubting himself.
He's talented.
He's exceptionally
He's very talented.
And that's why it's so freaking evil, man. People with that ability. Think of all the good you could do being that capable.
Right.
That's sort of the burden of having sort of innate maybe, I don't want to say skill, because skill is something you develop, but maybe just ability.
Yeah.
Some things come easier
natural
to
abilities.
some to others. So you have some talent, some natural ability that makes gaining those skills easier.
Right. And now there's some responsibility that comes with that.
Yes, there's huge responsibility that comes
which is
with
funny. Yeah. And it's almost like naturally just obvious that you should be more responsible now because of this.
The responsibility that comes with it is as much good as you are capable of doing, you are just as capable of doing that much evil.
Absolutely true. Yep.
And that's what this practical incarnation did. So you made it, but you told him perhaps they carry some truth. I know not. I know that they were tedious writings and the words were enough to give him faith. Dude. Dude. That's this guy. Why?
This is a world where the gods are just there and obvious and plainly manifest places. You don't need to make up a faith. The whole world's based on belief. You don't need to make it up.
He does have to in this instance because he needs him to believe in Zerthamon again.
Oh, that particular thing. I got you. That's
because
right. You're right.
In order for him to stop being a sourpuss and going through his problem, I need you and your freaking knife right now.
Yeah.
I need you to stop being such a crybaby over Zerthamon. Yeah, Zerthamon was a conflicted person, just like everyone. He's not perfect. Right. He's not this prophet that you revered. He obviously has got some problems in his life and history that are going to cause you to doubt. I don't need you to think about that right now. I need you to think about what I need you to think about. So I'm going to build Zerthamon back up in your eyes so that you can be convenient to me right now and not go through your acceptance and
Transitory,
your stages of grief. I don't want that right now.
right.
That's why it had to be Zerthmon.
Gotcha.
This one. Your ignorance astounds me. The man looks incredulous. Can it be that you do not know what he carries in his hand? That blade he carries is shaped by his thoughts. Such a tool, when
Right.
used properly, could
That's right.
slay the multiverse itself.
That's right.
Though obviously the Gith became separated when we arrived in the fortress, and I was unable to make use of his blade. So he needed him in there for the blade,
Yeah, but
but then he wasn't anticipating
It
that he
didn't
was going to
matter.
get separated from
Yeah.
the party, which is what happens when you go there too.
Every
Your
time,
party
yeah.
gets separated,
Yeah.
and you don't find them, and they get killed before
Yeah.
you can get to them. Let's see. This is more about Valor, I think. That's just a good line. I can't help but read it. Why was he hunting for us? Oh, any of countless reasons, some of which lie with me, and others which lie in the hands of other incarnations. He flicks a glance over to the incarnation who has been howling at you when you first arrived. So,
The paranoid one?
yeah, so
Yeah.
Valar's after us because of multiple reasons.
Yeah.
There have been many lives that have been blackened by incarnations with damaged minds. Some of us have created problems. I believe in solutions. Was he a threat? Oh, yes, or else I would have simply killed him. He nods. There is some link between him and justice itself, and that gives him power, even over immortals such as us. Especially if our injustices are great and ours are of the blackest sort.
That's great. That's really good.
I can't emphasize enough
It's
the
beautiful.
technical
the imagery. I got a
writing.
picture in my mind with that.
like just the technical mastery
yeah.
of words is on a profound level with
Yeah.
this man. He knows how to write
Yeah.
really, really well.
Yeah.
I needed someone to be my eyes here in the negative material plane. This is talking about Dayanara. To serve as a scout and try to find out who
That's
my
right.
killer was.
Yeah.
So he couldn't go in there without knowing. He needed a scout for the Fortress of Regrets.
Yes.
So he manipulated Dayanara into going there and dying so that she could be a ghost and go between the realms and
Yeah.
tell him what's in there.
And he knew she would be a ghost because she was so attached to him
that she wouldn't.
her
ghost would
She
stay.
would stay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Duh!
evil, but practical,
Practical,
utilitarian,
efficient.
materialistic. Like a lot of the things that in some ways our modern scientific technology society is kind of moving towards is that type of thing where people are just objects. But it's awful.
It's really bad.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. I need someone with eyes here on the negative material plane to serve as a scout. Only the dead can survive here for long. So Dayanara had to be sacrificed so that she could become something other than she was. A tricky business, but it worked. She helped you, didn't she? Right? Like she comes to you right at
Yeah.
the beginning of the game
Yep.
and gives you clues on what you need to do. He looks at you silently for a moment, then a sneer returns. And that is why you will be defeated if you confront our killer. It is because you are weak
Yep.
and you do not see that some things are necessary. And some of these responses are good. You dare call me weak? You orchestrated all of these grand plans for defeating this invisible enemy, and you got your ass handed to you anyway, and some poor girl was murdered because of it. Maybe if you'd done your job the first time you were here, this wouldn't have even been a problem. So no matter all
Right.
your schemes and all your rationality and your practical
Yep.
plans,
Came to
it
nothing.
amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. That's the real tragedy.
I guess so.
All these people died and suffered horrendously, and you didn't even get the thing you wanted.
Right.
You lost pitifully anyways. Just sucks.
And then he tells us, "Oh, you'll never get out of here. I'm the only one who can get out of here. You don't stand a chance. If I couldn't do it, you certainly can't do it."
Yeah. He's like, what are you talking about?
But yeah, but then when we kind of merge with him and like break his will and pull him into our being, we kind of sift through his thoughts real quick and realize that he didn't know how to
He
get out.
didn't know how
either.
to get out.
So he was just lying, which is what he does,
Yeah.
right? He was
Yeah.
just trying to manipulate us to give
It's just
our
this
agency to him so that he could.
Projection of confidence and
Yeah.
everything else. And dude's just as weak as he's projecting on everyone else
Yeah.
and doesn't want to admit it, doesn't want to accept it.
Nope. because
Okay.
that would not be practical.
I really, really liked the paranoid incarnation as well because you get at the root of his pain. This to me was like a really compassionate, almost kind of a sweet moment. Right? He's just like unhinged, going on and on about like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
body thieves, like you don't
The
know,
paranoid one,
like
yeah.
blah, 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 I'll never help you, and the way that you can kind of get through to him finally, right?
There's a
'Cause,
language, right?
yeah, the Uyu or whatever it
Ooh,
is.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
That wait a minute, you're the only one who knew this language, right?
Yeah,
If I know the language, that must mean I'm you.
right.
This is similar to how you sort of like
Yeah.
maneuvered around
What-
him with the sensory stone earlier.
I think he brings it up too in this conversation. He says, "It was you who set the trap, wasn't it? That was you at
Yeah.
the sensory stone."
Right.
And he's
So, he speaks with a lot of all caps, right? He's kind of shouting all the time. It's a very erratic way of speaking. There's very much a pattern into how his dialogue is written that are unique to him. But I love this. So he looks frightened. To your surprise, he reverts to normal speech, and all the inflections to his voice are gone. It is calm, level, and much
Yeah.
like your own. I no longer wish to live like this.
There you go.
That hit. You have suffered much. You were born into a world where nothing made sense, where strangers claimed they knew you, they blamed you for things you knew nothing of, and they tried to hurt you. He looks at you, and you watch as this incarnation loses its mad gleam, and his eyes become more like your own. Yes. That was at the heart of everything that went wrong with this incarnation. He awoke. His circumstance, he didn't wake up in a mortuary with a funny skull who came by and be like, "Hey, Chief, let's go on an adventure and figure out who you are. Hey, let me read your tattoos and like tell you funny stuff about this world." He awoke with people essentially coming after him right away, blaming him for stuff he didn't even do, he didn't even know anything about.
Yep.
It just ostracizing him, probably trying to kill him or hurt him in whatever way they could. From the moment of his birth, he was abused, hated, ostracized. That's what made him into this paranoid person.
Right, yeah.
Again, that wasn't a choice. That does something to a person's psychology, neurochemistry, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah.
That changes the nature of a man. Right? And you just feel so terrible for him. And
especially as it says that his gaze matches your own.
Yes.
It's like as you kind of remove these burdens from him, he becomes more like you.
Yep.
Because he always was like you. He just had these burdens you didn't have to carry.
Yep. Then I will protect you now. You will know peace. For that is all you ever wanted, isn't it? All you ever wanted was peace. This incarnation relaxes at your words, his eyes dimming as he locks gazes with you. There is the faintest of whispers, and he falls into the black stones. With his collapse, you feel a crawling sensation in the back of your skull. He integrates with you. That's all he wanted. He just wanted someone to actually sit down, listen, and
believe him,
him, and empathize with his situation, and say, "I am here to help you. I want you to know peace." That's all he ever needed anyone to say to him, and no one ever did. It's heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Then you move on to the good incarnation. Again, just so brilliantly written, all these lines. Who are you? Have we ever had a name, or was it just the first of us? The man chuckled softly. Know that I am your ally in this. I, like these others, have died my death in your mind, and this figment is all that remains. But who are you? This must be disorienting for you. Let me try to explain. I am one of your incarnations. I was lost. Now I am here again in this place. I've skipped ahead. But why? I have so many questions that you can answer. So you finally get it out of him, I should say, that he was the first incarnation.
Yeah.
He was pretending not to be in that last line of dialogue. He actually was the first. And I want you to answer some questions.
Right. You're the reason this all started.
And basically his response to that is, it's not going to do any good.
Right.
Me answering your questions, it's really pointless. Like, but why? I have so many questions only you can answer. Why did you become immortal? Why? Because if we die, truly die, death's kingdom will not be paradise, not for us. If you spoke to these others that were here, know that a fraction of the evil of their lives is but a drop of water compared to the evil of mine. That life, that one life, even without the thousands of others, has given a seat in the lower planes for eternity. So he did something. I mean, we're talking about how much we hate the freaking practical incarnation. If that's a drop
That's
in the
just because we
bucket,
know what he did. Yeah.
that's a drop in the bucket
yeah.
in comparison to this guy. I mean, I can only imagine, right? And that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
This is a brilliant
Imagine.
storytelling tactic. Don't
Yeah.
tell what he did.
Right.
Do not reveal it. Make your audience imagine what they think is the most evil thing, and that's what he did.
He was a Cloud Aerith shipper.
Oh, unforgivable.
Good one. Good one. Okay. I became that way. Yes. Hold on. But you seem so much calmer, so much more well-intentioned, you know.
Right.
How could you be that evil person? I became that way, yes, because for me, and his voice takes on a strange echo, it is regret that may change the nature of a man.
That's right, yeah.
But it was too late. I was already damned.
Right. That's actually the paradox. If the only way to change your nature is regret, you have to do something that is regrettable first.
Yep.
But once you do something that's that regrettable, as he says, it's too late.
Too late.
But that's the only way that your nature can be changed. It's a paradox. It's a cruel paradox.
Cruel paradox.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he asks you this last question, which I really like. His expression is somber. Did you live your life, the life, the brief life that you had? In the end, was it worth it? And there's a bunch of different answers you can give. I can't remember what they all are. The one I gave was, this life seems to have only caused suffering for myself and others. I would see it end, and the planes allowed peace once more. And he nods and then integrates with you. Farewell. Okay, and then DNR comes back and you can tell her the truth. This was tough.
This was tough. But because you don't know how she's going to react. She, depending on what you say, she can be very graceful about the whole thing. Where you say, hey, look, I used you, and I basically offered you to die, and I never loved you. My old one never loved you. And she says, well, do you, like, her whole world's shattered at this point. Yeah. Like, do you love me now, though? And it's like, well, I've learned a lot about you, and I actually think you're pretty cool now, actually. Yeah. I can't remember any of this stuff, but, like, yeah, I like you. I love you. I do love you now. Yeah. And she says, well, that's all that matters, right? Yeah. If that's what you choose to say. Yeah. That's more or less how it went for me. But she says, okay, as long as you love me now, then my sacrifice wasn't completely worthless. And I sacrificed myself not for the jerk who didn't love me, but so that in this future point, somebody who did love me can benefit from what I did, Yeah. And it's like, and that's you. And so there you go. It still works. Yeah. Her foundation shattered and was rebuilt very quickly. Yeah. And she was able to maintain it, not based on a lie. Although I think you could lie.
You can lie to her, I think.
Yeah, or you can say the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but either way.
Yeah, the answer, okay, so I have it here. Do you love me? If you say yes, my love, then nothing that has happened matters.
Yep.
Option one, lie. Of course I love you.
Of course I love
Even death cannot kill the bond between us. 2, truth. Though I did not know you at first, I have come to love you.
I've come to love you.
Your suffering has become mine, and I have found that I will do what I can to help you. Right. That's my truthful answer.
Yeah, that was very truthful.
I remember when I first played the game, kind of being in this mindset where it's like literally everyone talking to me is trying to manipulate me or like hurt me or like lie to me in some way. So when I first came across Dayanara and she's saying all this stuff, there were options in the dialogue like, if you love me, why are you trying to like manipulate me with this type of language like this?
Right.
Like, this sounds messed up.
Yeah.
Then you actually get to know her suffering if you're really paying attention to it. And like I really, really feel for this person.
Yeah.
Like if my past incarnation felt nothing for you, like in knowing your suffering and having done that sensory stone and feeling it from your perspective, like feeling your pain and your love and betrayal and all that, like now I definitely do.
You couldn't help but love somebody if you had literally felt felt what it's like to be them, Yeah. That's part of what love is.
And then another truth you can answer, I'm sorry, Dan, or I do not. I never knew you. Perhaps if I had met you under different circumstances. It's a tough answer to give, but it's definitely better than lying that you do love her. So.
Exactly.
But I could say truthfully.
So in a platonic sense, I do love you.
All right, last thing here is Transcendent One. I don't have much to say
So
about
on
this.
the different incarnations, I did just want to say that they are not us, but it seems, especially in the way that we deal with them, they're all a part of us, right? It's like, this is what I could become if the world put it on me this way and I'd become paranoid. This is what I could become if I was a psychopath and didn't saw everyone as objects. This is what I could become if I, what's the other one? Well, the good one, right?
Yeah.
If I, in the pursuit of good things, still did horrible things. Anyways, it's all him, though. It's all part of him. Even though it feels like you're not me and you're not me, the acceptance to say, no, like, I see the difference here, but also you are me. Like, this is me. And to be able to accept that into his mind and to integrate, like what Carl Jung would say, different parts of his shadow.
Yeah.
So that's more or less what I kind of got from there.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways this can go, right? He basically says, I'll indulge you and answer your questions, but I'm just going to kill you. You're going to forget anyway. So whatever. So you're asking questions, you're getting some answers, and essentially,
he kills all of our friends too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he killed everybody, so they're all dead when you walk in, except Mort, who can't die.
He's pretending though.
He's pretending to be dead.
I love Mort.
But the interesting thing is it can go a couple different ways. So you can confront and have a final battle against the Transcendent One and kill it.
Yeah.
Or you can kill yourself with the Blade of the Immortal if you got that in your playthrough. And by you dying, it would also kill the Transcendent One. Or
Right.
you can convince it to reintegrate with you
merge with
and
you,
to go into your endless suffering in the freaking blood war.
Yeah.
And again,
to boldly go intentionally down to the deepest pit of hell.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wild.
I think I'd be belaboring the point too much if I were to sort of read through. I'll just say again, the technical writing here, the way that these things are written, the way the conversations flow, the way the clever uses of conceits, it doesn't get better. This dude is a phenomenal writer. And so it's just super fascinating to listen to them, try to 4D chess each other back and forth in this conversation. No, you can't die. You don't get it. No, you don't get it. I can. Here it is, the blade. And so you have a choice. You either reintegrate with me or I kill myself. I'll let you decide. No, you're not going to do that. Give me that weapon. And anyway, you go back and forth, but eventually what I did was reintegrate.
Yeah, me too.
And what happens to the Nameless One's voice, he becomes all caps, just like the...
Yeah, that was
just
interesting.
like the Transcendent One, right?
Yeah.
So he gets that deep, powerful voice.
Yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Oh, by the way, fun fact, the person who voiced the Transcendent One is the same person who voiced the Elder God in Legacy of Kain. And anybody who knows anything about that game would know how appropriate it is that the same voice voices those two different characters.
Interesting.
But anyway.
Oh, we got to play that game.
Oh, God, yes. Best. Okay. I don't know.
I played the
Mike,
beginning of it, but I haven't beaten it. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, if you think the writing in Planescape Torment is good, and it's some of the best ever, it's got nothing on Legacy of Kain. It's got the best dialogue in the history of gaming. I will die on that hill.
We have a longtime follower, Chocolate Rob, and there are certain games that are his favorite games. We've covered many of them. So we've covered Vagrant Story. We've covered, a bunch of them that are his jam, right? But one of them we haven't gotten to yet, and he is holding out on is Legacy of Kain.
Legacy of Kain. We're going to do it.
I think in particular the sequel, which was
Soul Reaver,
but also, Legacy of Kain itself.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mix is bringing up that he hopes we talk about the Bronze Sphere.
I do have one note on the Bronze Sphere.
Do that, so go ahead.
Yeah, so once you integrate all of your people well, and if you do everything right, you get a little Bronze Sphere, which is great. It talks to you. It tells you stuff. It'll answer some of your questions. The only note that I really have based on what it said is that we're asking about our name and whatnot. And it says something along the lines of a name is the most important part of who you are, something like that. And we do kind of, they learn his name, but we don't hear it spoken, that he learns what his name is or was. But he just says, oh, wait, you don't mean, and he looks at his little shoulder patch and he's like, oh, the Torment tattoo. You mean my name is ... And he looks at that. I don't know if his name is Torment. That might be his name. but it's a bunch of people have guessed at his name, and Chris Avalon has said no to all of them. I don't know if anyone guessed the name Torment, but it seems as though his name just hit him, and it was like, wow, obviously, okay, this is my name. Oh, that's wild. Yeah. That's crazy, but they never say it on purpose so that you don't get an idea. Oh, Bill. Oh, my name's Bill. or Jish.
I would love that.
How freaking funny if his name was fetching Bill.
My name's Bob.
What kind of a name? What kind of a name is Jish or Tim or whatever? Anyways, so you get that stuff.
Who in the audience has seen that movie? what kind of name is Jish?
Someone on our Patreon, at least a year ago, had seen that particular movie.
Yeah.
But this one here that I have, fear names. Names have power and identity. Remain nameless, and you shall be safe. You will be safe without a name. This is true. But you also won't exist in the world of sociality without a name. It's like no risk, no reward. Like you can be safe by not risking anything, but then you also don't gain anything. But this reminds me of name calling as a bullying tactic.
Yes,
right?
Yes, good point.
Because to label somebody a name, right? It sounds on its face, based on that quote, that the best way to navigate through life is to not have an identity. But this is false. To not have an identity is to not exist in the social landscape. Yes, the social landscape is rife with trouble, but there is goodness also. But you will not see it. Anyways, so the other part is that the name has to stick. If I just call you like a Bliffly Blob, or like if I call you Cheese Face, like you don't
Merkle
care.
Brain.
You don't care. But what if I come up with a name that hits close to home, that you actually think about yourself, right? And then I like reach in and I call you a name. I label you something that you know is at least partially true. Now you're pissed, right? Now it's going to affect you, but it's because you're accepting that name onto yourself. That I am kind of that. I got to fight back now. Whereas otherwise you'd be like, I'm not that. Like that's stupid. Go away. Like that just bounces off of you, you know.
Yeah.
But when you feel the truth of it, then all of a sudden the name. So my point is that you have control over whether or not these names affect you and whether or not they are actually part of you.
Yeah.
But that's the tactic, and that's more or less how name calling works and why it works.
Yes. That's super, super good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. It also reminds me of two earlier points in the game. I didn't copy down the dialogue, but I thought I remembered the practical one saying something about the power of not having a name. Like how that also gives you a certain kind of power.
It does. And I'm saying, yeah, but that's wrong, man, because then you're flying under the radar, sure, and there is no negative consequences because nothing sticks. Because I don't have a name. It's like, oh yeah, you butthead. Yeah, I don't like none of it sticks. It all washes off me. That's fine, but also nothing sticks. Like you're just like a little slime monster in the middle of like people are trying to talk and nobody can categorize you because nobody knows what you are. Nobody even knows how to talk about you.
Maybe
because
that's efficient
there's no label with which
for the practical one's purposes.
Yeah, exactly. He's like a ghost in the world of sociality, accomplishing his purposes, but nothing can ever stick to him.
Yes.
Right? Probably also why he fails in the end.
Yes.
Because it's like, dude, you don't even exist.
Yeah, it also reminds me of that quest earlier down in like the underground village where Farad is at, of that guy who's like, oh, please help me get my name back. That person has my name and I can't exist
that's right.
without a name.
Yeah.
That was all working into the same concept. That was almost like a foreshadowing of this. It was almost like planting the seed of the idea in the player to where it could come to full fruition here. But
in fact, that might have even been where that quote was from. But I do know the brass ball talks about that. Or the bronze sphere, not the brass ball. Come on, that's a little different, right? Bronze sphere, same thing. Yeah. And mix, I don't. That's the only note that I have there. So if there's something else you're expecting.
No, it's good stuff. And it's such an easy thing to forget to do, too. Even if you have the bronze sphere and you don't use it after having talked to the first incarnation, which is like literally right before the final boss of the game, and you don't just go into your inventory and use it, you can totally miss this scene.
Yeah.
But you could also just not have ever gotten the bronze sphere after Fraud died. You just left it behind. But there's a whole scene there that you'll miss about the nameless one realizing what his actual name is.
Yep. And how names are important. They're super important.
Yeah. Okay. I think
my notes here, we become mortal, we die.
I think we did it. I think we reached the end.
You don't exist in the world of sociology until you have a name. So here's another thing. I wrote down these two, and one of these is going to be the title of this episode. What I came across as one of the themes of the game in general after this is that you have to fight the part of you that wants to be immortal, something like that, right? And immortality is death. That's going to be what this episode is titled. Immortality is death. There's
Different
a line
kind
too.
of death. Didn't somebody say that?
Yes,
It's
they
another
do.
type of death.
Well, and specifically, I can't remember who it was. It was right before this scene where somebody says, the key to mortality and like your purpose in life, are different for most people, but for you, it's the same thing, right? Because we were seeking to die. And there's this one line here that we didn't read. It's a really good line during this discussion with the Transcendent One. But I have to lean forward to read it. The Transcendent One says nothing can change the nature of a man, right? You've learned a false lesson if you think that you've learned of what can change the nature of a man, because Transcendent or Nameless One says, lots of things can do that, of course. And then, of course, Nameless One then says, have I learned that lesson? I've seen belief move cities, make men stave off death, and turn an evil hag's heart half circle. This entire fortress has been constructed from belief. Belief damned a woman whose heart clung to the hope that another who loved her when he did not. Once, it made a man seek immortality and achieve it, and it has made a posturing spirit think that it is something more than a part of me.
I read part of that
You
earlier.
did read part of that, but that beginning part, I have seen belief move cities.
Move cities,
right?
yep.
That's like a huge line right there.
Yeah.
And for him to say that what you believe about yourself can't change, in some fundamental sense, who you are, is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Obviously, we
It's
already went
absurd.
over that.
Totally absurd.
Yeah.
Belief is where it is everything.
It's the foundation of
And that goes all the way
everything.
back to
Literally
the
everything.
beginning of the game. Mourns for Trees. You wonder, you sit down and wonder, breaking down a story like this, why was that scene of Mourns for Trees, who's just wanting to bring trees back, inserted into this game? What was the purpose of that scene? You just read it.
Yeah.
It's instilling that idea. This is how you start picking up on the thread of what the writer, storyteller is getting at with the story. They will plant those things early if they know what they're doing. They know what they're trying. If they know what they're trying to say with their story, which is what a good storyteller does, they have something to say and they know what they want to say.
Yeah.
They're going to start saying it really early. They're not just going to hit you with it at the end. Here's the epiphany of what you need to know.
The moral of the story is, it's like, no, that should have been throughout. You shouldn't have to say that.
They're going to plant those
throughout.
seeds right at the beginning and nourish them and nourish them and nourish them all the way through with example after example after example that cements and further proves the point and solidifies the foundation of the argument all the way up until you can write that beautiful piece of dialogue and just slam it home.
Yeah.
It's perfectly executed. I cannot speak any higher of the technical mastery of writing that this man has. He knows what he's doing. Maybe more so than any other game writer I've seen outside of course, games maybe we haven't covered. Like Max was just saying with
A Legacy of Kain.
Legacy of
And
Kain,
Disco
Disco
Elysium.
Elysium. But that's what's so special about Planescape. Planescape is not one of my favorite games of all time. It is extremely tedious. It is at times baffling in its slowness.
Some of the things you have to do to advance completely go over your head the first time you play through. Yeah,
absolutely. It can be a painful experience.
It can be.
At
It
times.
can be.
I'm not saying it's not. It doesn't have merit. I just cannot get with its combat, but I do really love leveling up.
Yeah,
I really enjoy outmaneuvering people intellectually in conversation. Although I'm not really doing that. That's the illusion that they're giving me the thing to say, but I go, oh, that's smart.
But you
and
choose
click it.
1 out of 4.
Oh, that looks good. But yeah, it's not a fun game to play. And this is actually a video that I've made on a couple of different occasions about different games like Death Stranding and never released.
Oh yeah.
Like, does a game need to be fun? There's this idea that if a game is not fun, then it's not good.
That it's not valuable, yeah.
And my argument, or I guess my response to that is no. A game does not need to be good. It needs to be interesting. And if Planescape is not fun, which is my perspective, it is not fun, it is just incredibly interesting.
Yeah, it has. It is unbelievably interesting.
And so, am I going to put it in my top list of 25, 50 favorite games? Probably not. But it's the most well-written video game I think I've encountered.
Yeah.
From a technical writing standpoint, from knowing what it's trying to say right from the beginning and leading you into it, and just having all these incredibly fascinating ways of presenting that, all these witty, creative, clever ways of going about it. It is endlessly fascinating. I think we could do a podcast for the rest of our lives on this game.
I think so.
Probably.
God, yeah.
This could have been a 100 episoder.
Like, we're not going to do that ever again, but it's possible. It contains the depth at which you could do that.
Yeah.
And it deserves its place as one of the best classic RPGs ever made for that reason. And I really, really, really love it. But I like talking about it more than I like playing it.
If that's probably true for me too. That's probably true for me too.
Max, anything you'd like to say at the end here?
What?
I was just going to say, it's sort of like the Xeno games for me in that regard, at least for the ones I've played. I haven't played Xenoblade yet, but Xenogears and Xenosaga, I much prefer to talk about those games than I do play. It's the same thing with Planescape. But, there's something to be said. The game released in 1999. It's been 25 years. Yeah. And, you're right. Virtually none of the gameplay elements, at least for me, hold up. And I'm not even sure they held up all that well back in the day. But it's just the mastery of the writing that Chris Avellone brings here that enables the game to stay in the discussions of video games as an art form and what are the greatest examples of that 25 years onward. It's the writing. And it's this game that the writing in this game that makes me personally believe that Chris Avellone is the best writer in the history of Western games. Because not only did he do this, he did the first two Fallout games, he did Prey 2017, he did Knights of the Old Republic 2, amongst a whole bunch of other Dungeons and Dragons games. Like he did Neverwinter Nights, he did Icewind Dale. And every single time he brings these elements that you never really expect to see in traditional fantasy fare. But then he makes them interesting and he makes them feel organic to the world that they're in. And like you just said, Mike, it's so interesting that you could puzzle over them for years to come.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Planescape has been for so many people.
Yeah. Really glad we did this.
I am too. Real quick,
God. Yeah.
So,
2 more little notes here because I just now saw them and I can't believe I didn't read them. About names. In knowing your name, you know yourself. Your name, and that's one of the things the bronze sphere tells you.
Brass ball.
Your name is the most important part of you, I think is what the bronze sphere says. But this just reminds me of the ship of Theseus that Max brought up earlier. And that the one thing that doesn't change so long as you can flip out every single different part of it, but its name, it will still be called the ship of Theseus. And the name, despite the pieces all switching out, the name is what makes it what it is. Right?
The name is the true identity.
Yeah.
The name Theseus is the essence of the thing, not the physical atoms that make up the ship.
Right. Because as you know, in your body, your atoms are constantly changing out and not remaining the constant.
Depending on how old you are, you are literally a different human being by definition.
Some years,
Yeah. Maybe multiple times already in your life.
You've already grown several whole skeletons.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And so that actually has to be important, that your identity is what maintains your continuity.
Yeah.
And then I won't say the last one. I'm going to save it for another time because it's really good, and I'm just going to tease everybody on it. It's a good brain teaser, little philosophical, ethical conundrum question, but it's very relevant to lots of things. So I might even bring it up in Dune.
Yeah.
So this game is so good, and it's so much fun. But I probably will never play it again. but I love the experience. I really do.
I think what's great is I've got at least 2 full playthroughs on the internet that I can review now with different choices.
And see your different...
I suppose if I really wanted to see, but I don't know if I'd probably just go watch somebody else.
Yeah. There's too many variables.
I don't think I'm going to play the game
different
again,
choices.
is what I'm trying to say. But I like it.
Everybody.
But I do like it. Thanks,
this was
everyone.
A blast.
just so you guys know, if you haven't heard yet, and if you're still here at the freaking 3-hour mark.
Yeah, sorry, Max. This was a long.
It's all good.
Xenosaga 2 and 3 are going to be our next
That's right.
major podcast series. Those are the ones that won the vote.
Mhm.
In between that, we're going to have a few episodes. I will be out of town for a few weeks. So Case and I will be doing a single episode, a one-off on Journey,
Yep.
the game
Ooh.
Journey, next week.
Yeah.
And then I'll be gone. Case and I'll have some episodes in between till I get back and we start Xenosaga. But if you want to get started on the Xenosaga stuff, Pied Piper is something
Yeah,
we're going to
that's
be
right.
looking at first.
That's right. Yeah.
So we're not just going to jump straight into Xenosaga 2. We're going to do Pied Piper and possibly some of the differences of the DS version of Xenosaga Episode 2.
Yeah, I want to check that out for
Um,
sure.
Maybe that would be
Other
would
than-
be better to hold off on until after we've actually done the game. So maybe
Oh, actually, that's a good point.
to see what the differences are.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that part will come at the end. But Pied Piper, and I think there's at least one other ancillary sort of title related to the Xeno series that we'll probably cover in that first episode
Okay.
before jumping into the game proper. We will not be doing dev history again. We did all of the dev history for all of the Xenosaga episodes at the beginning of our Xenosaga 1
Right.
podcast.
There's really not much more to
There's
say.
nothing more to say
Other
there.
than I think 2 had a different director, so there might be a little.
Yeah, but we even talked about that
Yeah, you're right.
in that
We did.
before. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, Missing Year. That's what it is. Drake, thank you for bringing it. So Missing Year.
Yeah, but
and
then-
Pied Piper.
Mix as one of the 2 may actually go better between 2 and 3 instead of 1 and 2. So
We'll figure
just
all
another
that.
thing. Yeah, we'll figure this out.
Pied Piper, I think for sure is going to be talked about before Xenosaga. But anyway, we will see you guys then. That's the plan for now. Have a lovely rest of your week. We'll see you next time.